Good morning from the campus of the United States Sports Academy in Daphne, Alabama. This is Sports Talk. I'm Dr. Arthur Ogden, Chair of Sports Management here at the Academy and your moderator. Every Wednesday morning at this time, we invite members of our faculty and staff to come discuss pertinent issues of the day. The panel today consists of Ms. Sarah Lee, who is our registrar. And Sarah's been with the Academy for a number of years. She has a sport and military background. She's currently a U.S. Masters swimmer and distance runner. And to my left, my extreme left, is Dr. Steve Butler, the Dean of Academic Affairs here at the Sports Academy. Most of you are familiar with the recent fury and the recent storm of what happened with Ray Rice of the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, he was involved in brutal action against his wife once back in April when they were dating, I suppose, and she was his fiancée, and they got it on tape that he had really knocked her unconscious and dragged her like a rag doll off of the elevator. Somehow or other they reconciled, got married, but now there are more charges. The hailstorm of protest is coming about as a result of the punishment or the penalty that was handed down by Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner. He gave Ray Rice 2 games suspension. Now there are some other penalties which are meted out for NFL players. If they hit other players or if they abuse drugs in some fashion or other, and those are usually pretty severe penalties. But most of them are part of the collective bargaining agreement between the Players Union and the NFL. And so we're going to take a look at some of these things. One of the things that prompted me to discuss this on a larger scale, predominantly with my wife, who's obviously familiar with sport and obviously far more intelligent than I am, was an article by Erin Gloria Ryan. It was posted on Deadspin. It says, "Face it, women, the NFL does not give a blank about you." She chronicles a long list of violence that has been perpetrated against women at the hands of NFL players. And one of the comments that she makes is, the 2-game suspension is ludicrous in light of the harsher penalties handed out by the NFL for other offenses. Every sentient source was astounded with a 2-game suspension for a guy who knocked out his wife, when much more severe penalties have been levied against players who took illegal diuretics, smoked pot, used illegal fertility drugs in attempting to conceive a child with their partner, or inflicted injuries against other players during a game. In short, Ryan points out that the NFL has a sad history of dealing with this issue of domestic violence, even though they do have a program of orientation for their rookie players. But she says the NFL does not have a domestic problem. It does not have a rape problem. The NFL has a misogyny problem. And perhaps that's where we need to take it off from there. And obviously we've got a number of questions which we try to devise quite a bit. This first question: are these loud objections to Goodell's penalty of Rice, are they really justified? Steve, we'll give it to you first.
Yeah, I think they are. I think the objections are justified. I think the 2-game suspension was ridiculous. I think the real sad thing here is that I think Goodell had a chance to send a message to people who do stuff like this, and he failed miserably. And another thing that really bothers me is that now the precedent's kind of been set. You know, how even after this uproar, the next person who hits a woman, which is totally inexcusable, if Goodell sides to give him a more harsh punishment, how is he going to justify that? I think the 2-game suspension was ridiculous. I think it's basically a slap on the wrist. I think a lot of people you hear I listen to ESPN radio all the time, and a lot of people have been making the comparisons between this and the drug suspensions. I think, as you pointed out, that's really not a good comparison because the drug suspensions are collectively bargained. They're pretty well set. First time is this, second time is this, third time is this. But the comparison I heard on the radio that I think is a very valid one is the Ben Roethlisberger case. Mm-hmm. Ben Roethlisberger was not charged with a crime. The charges were dropped, and all indications from everything you read in the paper was that nothing really happened, yet he was suspended for 6 games. And I'm not here to say what Ben Roethlisberger did.
But that was reduced to 4 games.
It was reduced to 4 on appeal. Yeah. But I have a hard time in my mind justifying the fact that based on everything we've seen that Ray Rice only got 2 games. And one thing I heard that was interesting on the radio yesterday was that there is more tape that the public has never seen, that the NFL has seen, and is really, really bad for Ray Rice. And if that's true, then it makes the 2-game suspension seem even more ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that we all empathize with it. I mean, I have 4 daughters and 3 granddaughters, and they're all athletes, and I don't like this. Sarah, you've read through Ryan's article, and you've also read through Jane McManus' article that chronicles a lot of these problems. As an athlete, as a female athlete, and as a woman, and as a mother, give us your views.
Well, I think it's important to remember that about 1 in 4 women will be affected by domestic violence or some sort of assault in their lifetimes. So perhaps it's not only exclusively an NFL problem, but a problem our country is facing in our colleges and universities across the country as we work to try to curb the numbers or the epidemic of violence and assault against women, not just female athletes. But, Steve brought up a good point about not being able to compare the drug offenders in the NFL to those who have perhaps done something that involves domestic abuse. But Josh Gordon of the Cleveland Browns, for testing positive for marijuana, was suspended for 16 games. 16 games for testing positive for a drug that in some states is now legal under certain uses.
2 states that have NFL teams, by the way.
Right.
Yeah. Washington and Colorado.
Right. And so basically the message that the NFL is sending, not only by the Baltimore Ravens tweeting out quotes from Rice and all these other statements in support of what he did, essentially, they're saying that the drug use or these kind of incidents is more important or a more egregious offense than domestic violence, which is affecting so many people, particularly women in our country.
Yeah, I'm one of those, when it comes to this issue, I'm a feminist. And I raised my daughters to be very strong, not to put up with that kind of nonsense.
Right.
But the point here that Ryan makes and seems to weave in a pattern is this pattern of misogyny, within the NFL. And to your point, the marijuana may affect their performance on the field, but beating up their wife or their girlfriend or something like that won't affect their play on the field. And so that's a values issue, and it's implied in what you were saying. I think there's so many things that need to be done. Perhaps we ought to have them put something like that in the CBA as well.
I think another thing that I haven't heard mentioned much this time is, and I think it's a fact. What would the suspension have been if this was a third string offensive tackle? I think the fact that Ray Rice is a established NFL star, and I think I think there's a scale of acceptance of things based on how much talent you have. The more talent you have, the more accepting, especially the home fan base.
Which really boils down to money.
Right. Mm-hmm. I can almost guarantee in Game 3 Ray Rice will get a standing ovation if it's in Baltimore. If it's on the road, it'll be different. But I haven't seen their schedule. But he'll be.
Well, this points to the problem that Sarah was talking about. Maybe there's across the board misogyny that's taking place.
Yeah.
The only cultures I can think of that are overtly misogynistic, from my perspective, are some of the Muslim nations who treat their women so terribly. And the Taliban, I mean, that was just ridiculous what they did to women. But we have to take a look at this because we don't want to just protect our wives. No, we want to protect our daughters, because one of the things, and it's implicit in what Sarah was saying, the cycle of domestic violence is something that youngsters learn in the homes, and they see that the men are getting away with it, the women are passive to it. So the young girls that are there believe, well, this is the way it's supposed to be, and the boys say themselves, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is the model, this was the thing that I said about Clinton when Clinton was, the predator in the White House. What kind of an example did that set for young men in America? And at the same time, how would the world, and this also speaks to the double standard, what if Clinton had been a woman in the White House behaving that way? How would she have been cast? But that's another issue. But it also is part of this spectrum of violence against women. And from my perspective, I think that the reason the NFL needs to stand up is because it is so visible. It is so very visible. They make a big issue, it was in October, about they all wear pink shoes and they give so much to breast cancer awareness. Come on, folks. We're all aware of breast cancer. Somebody in our family almost was 1 in 4 families is affected in some fashion by breast cancer. We're aware of it. And they're going to give 5%. Well, why don't they just say we're going to give X amount of dollars as opposed to 5%, which is flexible and so forth. And another aspect of this, in 1998, there was a Tampa Bay Buccaneer cheerleader who had breast cancer and ended up having to suffer through double mastectomy. She was 25 years old. She was dismissed. Quietly, but she was dismissed. Doesn't that say something about their commitment to breast cancer awareness, and we're going to do all this? Anyway, it's part of the hypocrisy.
Well, breast cancer awareness is great, for bottom line standards, but it does come back to, and I don't mean to repeat myself, to money. The viewership of NFL games has gone up 31% over the last decade, and in order to continue to make revenue go up and up and up, they have to target women to do nail gating and sell pink tank tops and do all kinds of things. But women want to align themselves with companies that they perceive have the same values as they do. So, no matter how many pink socks they wear or coin flips that are look candy coated and look special for little ladies, when they make decisions like this, no woman will sit there and support it.
Yeah, I think we can't blame the Tampa Bay thing on Roger Goodell because he wasn't the commissioner then. But I think maybe with the possible exception of Mark Emmert, there's never been a bigger hypocrite in a sports leadership position than Roger Goodell, and he's proven that again last week with this thing. And he'll be out there with the smiling face and the pink ribbons and all that stuff in October, like you said. And this one article written by Greg Doyle talks about he's waiting for the punchline because it has to be a joke.
Right.
Where's the punchline, Mr. Commissioner? The only person right now laughing is Ray Rice. But that it's just part of that hypocrisy. The fact that the thing that bothers me is that people have gotten bigger fines and suspensions for hitting other players on the football field who are grown men who weigh 230 pounds and wearing pads more than a man who weighs 230 pounds punching out a woman who weighs 100 pounds.
Right.
You know, that just something's wrong there, I think Sarah hit it right on the head. It's all about money. The owners aren't going to have any problem with Roger Goodell as long as they're a $9 billion industry, $9 billion a year industry, and I think, you know, I don't know how Goodell gets his credibility back after this one. I really don't.
I certainly don't think he will in the community of women who support sports. I know that ESPNW is not happy, and with the comments, some of you may not be familiar with the comments that Stephen A. Smith made last Friday when he made it sound like it was the woman's fault. Monday morning he came on ESPN's First Take and did an apology. He's been suspended for the rest of the week. And that came about from ESPN talking with focus groups and the groups of women that work for them. I want to come back to the owners one quick second, because you said something earlier. Said, well, if something like this comes along again, the penalty, the bar has already been set for this type of penalty being assessed. I heard something that was rather conspiratorial and made me feel, wait a minute, is Goodell doing this? Is he going to go soft on Ray Rice because then he can go soft on Jim Irsay, who's had a drug problem forever, when it comes time when he gets down out of rehab or whatever he's doing, and he's got to deal with that. What's he going to say? Well, I can't treat the owners any differently than I treated the players. So it's all conspiratorial. Let me ask both of you, where should the NFL go from here? Sarah?
Well, I'm not sure if they can dig themselves out of this one. It's a strange situation with the 2-game penalty. Even the way that they handled this, having his wife speak on his behalf. He's such a good guy. I basically did something to provoke it. I think that's the classic defense from every person who's been abused. If you know anything about domestic abuse, is that people who are abused are more likely to defend the person who is actually abusing them. And for the NFL to get behind broadcasting her response, and like I said, in Baltimore Ravens official Twitter page tweeting out those responses, they've all rallied behind this. And it's like I said, it's a very strange situation that we're finding ourselves in, or they are finding themselves in, and us to sort of scratch our heads as fans of this, huge industry of sport, where we're expecting these athletes to be role models for our young people, and not to just simply say, well, women, suck it up. You need to learn how to conduct yourselves better. You need to dress appropriately. You need to make sure you don't put yourselves in situations to be abused or raped. It's a strange culture that we're moving toward, and by not coming down more aggressively against people like Ray Rice, not only in our society, but with these multi-billion-dollar industries who are supporting them, I don't know where we're going or where we're heading. It's pretty scary, honestly.
It sounds to me like some of the things you were describing sound to me like we're headed toward the Taliban.
Sarah used the frame, she don't know if the NFL can dig out. And I think that's a good phrase, because I listened to Adolfo Birch on Mike and Mike 2 days ago, and he's the NFL's director of player relations or labor relations.
He didn't do a much better job.
And what I thought, why Sarah triggered that, as I was driving my car listening to it, all I could thought of is this guy, the NFL sent this guy out, and all he's doing is digging deeper and deeper and deeper. It was a joke, and I thought Mike and Mike handled it well. They said at the end, they said basically, we respect you coming on and we thank you for your time, but you're wrong. And everybody's 5 million people that sent tweets and stuff into ESPN can't all be wrong. And his position basically was, this is what we did, it's the right thing to do, and nobody should question it.
Yeah, when I was listening to him, you know, I was thinking of, remember Baghdad Bob during the Iraq War? The guy kept coming on saying, there is no war, there is nothing like it, denial, denial, denial. At any rate, this is a conversation that needs to take place across the board, not just for the NFL, but for college sports as well. We know that there's being violence done against, perpetrated against women on campuses, and it's not being handled properly. And so, thank you for tuning in. I want to thank Sarah, and I want to thank Steve for participating in this lively and important discussion, which needs to be a national discussion. And from the United States Sports Academy, we wish you a good day.